Very few people know of this wonderful land, now one with forgotten things. For today there is very little to remind us of this ancient continent that was once so fair and greater even than ours in glory and beauty, a land filled with happy homes, with peasants, statesmen, and philosophers, and all these things which we now think of in connection with the highest and greatest phases of life. This great continent, now lost, the great land of Atlantis, is now somewhere miles beneath the ocean, and over it past our great ocean linears and sailing ships, strange sea creatures now play through the pillars of its ancient temples. Weeds and mosses are twined around its ancient getaways. Its libraries containing the sacred tomes of ages have vanished from the light of day and are now known only to the finny Dinians of the deep, a land of desolation, miles under the surface of the sea blue waters. Its wondrous arches thick with coral, and its statues deep beneath the shifting sands of the ocean bottom. In truth, it is a continent that is gone, a land forgotten, saved by a few poets whose ancient songs tell of its vanished glory. Can we say that it is lost? No, nothing in nature can be lost, but great changes have come in the eternal program of divinity. As a land, it is no more, but as a memory, it will remain forever in the soul of the mystic, while the wondrous lesson that it teaches is well worth the glory that is gone. Nature is like the changing surfaces of the sea and the waves that come and go. Today, a thing is, tomorrow it is no more, but somewhere in the endless vistas of the infinite, the thing that once has been shall always be. In a new environment, in settings changed, its life goes on, manifesting the powers of the Creator. The broken flower is gone, not dead. It has vanished, but is not lost. Somewhere, mid-stick or star, it will bloom again. In other lands, it will carry on its work of charming the eyes of the world and building over more stately mansions and more complex organisms to give greater expression to its tiny life. Its message is eternal, and its life is without an end. In order to understand the sublime message and the wondrous mystery of Atlantis, it is now necessary to realize the indestructibility of all things. And while it now lies beneath the ocean, its work still goes on. Its memory remains. Its fingerprints are on the marble slabs of eternity. Its work is never done, but when it needs new fields for its endeavors, nobler channels for its expression, it goes on to other worlds, to other lands, to other beings, and its empty, broken shell molds from the sight of men. Let us picture for a moment this lost continent inhabited by a strange race, a few broken remnants of which still wander the earth, tottering slowly towards the veil of oblivion. Here and there still walks a red man, the remnants of a dying people. The ancient Egyptian of the pharaohs is gone, and now there lives in his place another people. The glory of Egypt is crumbled to the dust, and the temples of the rising sun are buried beneath its desert sands. The ancient red man is fast vanishing from our midst. He is no more. His last great stronghold in the Western Americas has been broken, and as a dying wanderer, he passes silently into the eternal West. Many are they who have hesitated the day of his destructions. Many are there today who have upon their hands and hearts the blood of this ancient people. But the law works eternally, and those who have helped to bring about the destruction of even the least of these ancient people shall live to see their own land in ruins. And the time will come when the right race shall lie down in an endless tomb to be listed with the forgotten, to be laid side by side with the mighty kings of Atlantis. Let us picture the red man in the days of his glory, a few remnants of broken temples on the peninsula of Yucatan, a few deserted altars amid the snow peaks of the Andes. Here and there a lonely pyramid rising from a desert waste, a sphinx of stone that never speaks, a handful of dried bones, a few old philosophies, and heaps of broken stone are all that is left to tell of an ancient civilization upon whom the wrath of the gods was loosened and whom annihilation is practically complete. They had brewed their cups of poison, which they themselves drained to the dregs. Their iniquity overflowed, and they vanished as all must do. Let us pass again back through the ages to the dawn of human thought. Let us read again their record and the living powers of nature. As we gaze into the eternal mystery, we see great mountains rise from the blue waters of the Atlantic. Great plains, clothed and better glorious, appear from the darkness of the tomb. Wondrous cities with twisting spiral manna trees rise upward to the sky. Colleges and universities paved in marble dot to the fairest of all lands. Great colosseums and amphitheaters, which most man has never sought to build, rise out of the mist and bring back memories of days bygone. A beautiful land stretches before your eyes, a continent that blossoms as a rose, which extended all over the great area where now the mighty Atlantic rolls. Far up in Iceland and Scandinavia, from Nova Scotia and Labrador, through banks of ice and snow, great mountains rise, people of strange wild beings. Further south, the beautiful lands of the temperate zone rise out of the deep, from the British Isles to the coast of the United States. A great host of phantoms rise from the forgotten past, a might race of the copper-colored beings. Down through Egypt and South Africa they pass in steady streams. Even though South America they wandered mid fertile fields which they tilled, and over wondrous mountains that they climbed, a mighty race of happy laughing people, strong of arm, great of heart, glorious in ideals. They were the red men that are now fast disappearing in the setting sun. There midst the great nations were established, precisely governments were built, great universities spread knowledge to the corners of creation. Kings and emperors, in robes of silk and gold, in jewels and diamonds, the heritage of gods, ruled over mighty peoples as numberless blades of grass. Here they came into being, the priests of kings of ancient times, the divine servants of the gods with the snakes upon their brows, ruled Atlantis in the days of its glory. For it was not a land as we know it. Life as we know it now was very different in the world in which they lived. Their civilization was wild, massive, and grand. The ignorance of many, but the divine wisdom of a few, marked the civilization of that of an ancient empire. During these days, great giants labored on the earth. Man was so puny being as he is today, but stood rather like the one-eyed Cyclops guides of Homer and the strange beings of the Odyssey and the Iliad. There, the frost giants of Scandinavia walked the earth in the millions of years that are past, and the glorious, grand, and wonderful truth is that these giants are not dead. The Hercules of myths still live. The bodies have changed, but so surely as these ancient peoples wandered the earth in the dawn of this day of creation, so surely we are these people. You and I have wandered amid the temples of Atlantis. The city of golden gates has opened its portals that we might enter. We are the ones whose footsteps sounded on its streets of marble in the days of the greatest race that yet has been. Row after row of pillars, mile upon mile of fluted columns, millions of domed roof, marked the civilization of Atlantis. Then the pyramids were in their glory, and the casting stones had not yet known the vandalism of neglect. On ancient tablets, now lost in languages forgotten, were engraved the history of mighty things, of the world in its making, of the glory of gods and sages that walked with men. You and I were there in the ages listed with the dead. We wandered through the pillars of the ancient temples. In the robes of glory we stood before the altar fires. We gazed down from the mountaintops in pride and glory upon the works of our hands. Stone by stone we built the city of the golden gates. We were the Atlanteans who raised temples on the mountain peaks to the glory of our gods. Through the ages we labored as slaves, we have known as the master's whip. As kings we have held the scepter, and today we are living the things we once were, as we raise our eyes and gaze into the future as of old from the mountain peaks of Atlantis. In order that we may appreciate the civilization of the ancients, it is necessary for us to accept this principle, this great fundamental principle of the continuity of life. Those unwilling to accept this principle can never learn the mysteries of Atlantis. They can never know why that continent came and vanished again. In order to find the true reason, we must gaze back to the things we were and realize again the altar fires and the temples burn low and dying, buried beneath the nations of dead. Let us try to picture one of the great Atlanteans, his massive frame, his glorious brow, his eyes filled with luster of primitive life, unhampered by the ties which bury races, unbroken by the millstone of today's affairs, which in this land of ours are grinding human hearts to feed ambition. They had many things that we have lost. We have many things they never knew. The reason for it all is that man must grow along many timelines. If it were only necessary for him to have a glorious body and strength divine, then the world would have ended with Atlantis, or its end might have come in the days of classic Greece, and the work would have been well furnished. But there were other things to do. Today, we are the fifth great race of beings that have inhabited our world. The Atlanteans were the fourth. They lived their day, and now have passed on to endless sleep. But the spirit continues its march eternal. Man has not yet reached the grandeur of Atlantis and the new civilization which he works, but one day in the mystic future he will pass beyond anything that ever was before, and having reached the heights of all, the white race will draw its shroud around it and vanish to make way for other peoples and other works, but the same spirits will remain. Let us learn the lesson of Atlantis and build again in the mirror of mind the things that brought about its grand destruction on the seventh day of its creation. We are the breakers of new ground, but we go on, we must review the old. We must live again that great power of concrete thought which was the crowning generation of Atlantis. We must remember its philosophers and sciences. Then shall we be crowned with a new power to which in all races are striving, the power of creative genius, the power of abstract thought, the power to unite, and that spiritual eye which sees the oneness of life and the brotherhood of man. The keynote of Atlantis was the survival of the fittest. Its great ones were great because the weak were weaker, but in our day a new power is being added. We have not yet reached the glory of the Aztec king before the coming of the white race, but we will reach it and pass beyond it with the great power of compassion crowning us more gloriously than ever. But in passing, let us learn the lessons on the way. Our world today stands as Atlantis stood. Our buildings rise upward. They may many towers pointing to the skies. Our libraries are filled with ancient wisdom. Our scientists and philosophers are exploring the mysteries of nature. Again, we fly through the air and under the sea. Again, we walk the path that Atlantis walked. But we must go on. We must survive to the glory of a greater work. The great right of every people is to labor with new things. The new world has dreams which Atlantis never dared to conceive, and possibilities unmet of by men of old. But to do great things, we must have the courage of conviction and the power to pave the way. You see, we have other works to do in other ways. For a day we have forgotten the things we were. A veil conceals the past that we may learn the new thing in a different way. We are unfolding new powers, building new facilities, mastering new arts, creating new ideals. The old soul, its years measured by the labors it has done, is now confronted with a great problem. It is our duty to take the best that Atlantis had to give, to learn the mysteries that Lemuria, now lost beneath the waters of Australia, gave us in times more ancient even than Atlantis, and use them as steps to build on, and there top a new temple based upon the foundations of the old, to go higher, to reach ever heavenward. It is the age-long cry of the mysteries. It is the same cry that sounded through the temples of Atlantis. It is the fulfillment of the inner urge that makes necessary new experiences, that brings new worlds out of the waters and causes others, their labors finished, to vanish from the sight of men. In Atlantis, many of these things we call sublime would have formed but kindergarten classes amid those ancient philosophers. White dumb temples of education filled Atlantis. Every city, no matter how small, was crowned, and by its universities and colleges, and in the city of the Golden Gates were the divine sources of learning, which initiated those who came out of the world into the way of the gods. We have taught many things they did not know, but they taught things which today we cannot remember, but still have hidden in our souls to be used again when we need. Or mayhaps we were thoughtless then as we are now today. We realized life because we never lived or studied it then. Therefore, we wander through the mazes. Our spiritual teachers contradict each other eternally. And when we read the mysteries of Revelations, we believe the writer must have written for himself alone. We wonder. Sacred philosophers and moral ethics which are sealed, truths that mean nothing to our souls. We were the drones amid the hives of learning, as oftentimes we are today. So now we know what we learned then, and tomorrow we shall be known by what we learn today. We can tell the world how to live, but we cannot make them live it. Those who were told but did not practice today know not the lessons that they might have learned. There was, in the city of the Golden Gates, a temple dedicated to the worship of light, the divine principle of human knowledge. The light was served by the priestcraft. It was served also by the legislator. It was honored and adored by all the powers of that ancient land. From between the pillars of this temple came forth the priest kings. Here humbly before the altar, they prayed that the divine light from the 7 stars might come down to them. But the years went by and materially took the place of spirituality. Then come to the handwriting on the wall. The stars in their courses upon the heavens penned strange celestial words upon the blue fields of eternity, and the priests raising their crucifixes cried, Behold, the sun god is murdered, and light is passing over into darkness. Then the great catalysms came that shook this mighty people to the very foundation of their world. The savages from the north and south fought with the civilized people who tried to enslave and defraud them. They were driven back, but the debt of blood was upon the hands of Atlantis, and the priests of the ancient temples cried in the marketplaces, With all the spilling of blood, Atlantis has sealed its doom. And high spiritual ideas were buried beneath materiality. Death and pestilence walked in its ways. Degeneracy and lust overran its people, and its nations were drenched in blood. There are many kinds of blood. This is that which comes from broken hearts. There is the lifeblood that pours from the soul. There is the blood of our fellow man. And all of this was loosened by the falling peoples of Atlantis. Again, the warning of the gods broke upon it. Its nations were split and torn. But more and more, the black light took the place of the white. Slowly, the divine priest king lost his touch with God. His connection with divine powers, which mold the destiny of worlds, was broken. The priestcraft lost its sacred word, the name of the living God. The light went out upon the altars. Magic and sorcery took the place of the sacred mysteries, and far from gods no longer flowed the life which makes nations live. A new people was born out of the land of darkness to carry the dying fires and the Shekinah's glory out of all lost land. All glorious things, it seems, must sometime wither. All the flowers that bloom must one day fade. Blessed are those who know that the fading flower but marks the passing of life to a more glorious work. For man need not be always in trough of the sea, but may step from the crest of one wave to the crest of the next. So a new race was born to take charge of those who were true, and the great white brotherhood slowly formed a new people among the falling temple pillars of the old. And the sacred ark, with those cherubims sacred to the Lord, passed slowly onward to the west. Around them gathered the faithful ones, and the great light went out in the land of darkness, which again was shattered by mighty cataclysms. Its people were torn by an unknown fire. None knew what that fire was, for they had not read the handwriting on the wall. They had not heard the warning which the white-robed priest had spoken to them from the house steps, nor the sacred words which were chanted from the temple steps, for their ranklings and denizens had drowned its note. But the voice had sounded from the temples of Atlantis, saying, "Thou art weighed in balance and found wanting." The great white brotherhood worked on, however, in a mysterious way, and the new continent was unrolled for the chosen peoples. A great pathway was made, and the waters and those who still serve the noble and true passed onward into the promised land. All that was left of the continent of Atlantis was a single island. At last, this dying remnant of Atlantis sank, and in less than 24 hours, millions of souls were freed from their molds of clay. Now comes the problem. With all their arts and sciences, crystallization crept in, which is the end of all that lives, the crystallization of thought, vitality, and growth. Nothing has to crystallize, but all things do that stagnate. Today, we face the same problems that brought about the destruction of Atlantis in ages that are past. Our lands stretch out in peace and plenty, and we too feel secure. Nothing surely can happen to us. Yet the moment no man knoweth, but one thing we do know, either the work must be done, and done well, either the soul must learn its lessons, or else new environments are necessary to make complete possible. When we allow the fires upon our altars to die out, when we allow our higher beings to starve, then we are failing in the great work. Then again will thunderbolts of above be loosened, and eternal scythe reap in its harvest. Let us consider some of the cause that brought about the destruction of Atlantis. The first was blood. All those who live by the sword shall perish by the sword. And with the first drop of blood that man sheds comes price. His own must flow. Blood feeds the flames of passion, and when the animal in man is fed, he becomes as a raving wolf, and the four horsemen ride forth again on their journey of destruction. Only peace can bring peace, and that must come from man himself. We are all the body of the Father. We are all the Christ in flesh. And when each of us does as he should, things will prosper, not with transcending prosperity that rises up and then disappears like a comet, but with the slow, gradual growth that marks the spreading oak. Unless man learns the ways of peace, the day is not far off when the blue waves will break over his homes and the light will go on to other lands. The second necessity of man is to find the lost art of beauty. Probably you do not know what beauty means, for beauty is a mystic thing. We can look at a man like Lincoln as homely as the fence rails that he split, and yet there's a beauty there. We can look around us, and many are there whom we call handsome, but beauty is not there. There is much prettiness, but little beauty. As we look at the gods of Greece and Rome, we find that the world has long called beauty, but when you look at the eyes, you will find a blank, for the sculptures did not fill them in. Few realize what beauty is or how subtle are its ways. None know who have it. None realize who really possess it. It is something that shines out and molds man into an expression of itself. Gold trinkets, ribbons, and a power puff are not the secrets of beauty. Beauty is of the soul, and we need more of it. We must have more of that beauty that molds form into the ideal. The eyes of form see the beauty of form, but the true mystic realizes that the source of beauty is not the form. It is the soul that shines within. We may look over the world at those who are now judged as the beautiful, the handsome, the distinguished, and yet always there is something missing, and it was the loss of that something that sank the continent of Atlantis. We must have more beauty, and the world must realize more and more that beauty is as beauty does. Never mind how perfect the form if the soul and mind be not there. It is an empty shell. It is a dead thing without reason for its being. The beauty of harmony based upon strength. The beauty of peace, strong on the foundation of compassion. The beauty of purity supported by knowledge is missing. It was missing with the later Atlanteans, and if we would not follow in their footsteps, we must find it again today. We must mold our lives into that divine glory we seek under the name of Christ, into the grandeur that was found in the temples of the ancients, where a beautiful life molded a body worthy of a Greek god. The beauty of compassion, of love, and of spiritual thought is sadly missing in the world today. It is the first to go. We hardly know when it goes, slowly if it fades away, and when it fades, the strength of people. Long before the inharmony breaks forth as a ravenous flood, this subtle something vanishes into the night. It is the handwriting on the wall, a warning to all who live, for when the beauty goes with it, goes the strength of a people. We can bring it back, this elusive thing, this psyche floating over the marshlands, veiled in a mystic haze. A something unseen but felt. It must come back if our age is to reach the goal it seeks. There is something else also that must return. The universities of Atlantis must be built again. We must raise again the schools of learning. By learning how to live, for the ignorant are not dead, and there are none so ignorant as those who will not learn. There are none so blind as those who will not see. Yet we forget, but let this thought be in our minds. Those who forget shall be forgotten. Our world is filled with forgetful people who forget by habit. They have forgotten so long that they now cannot remember, but in some way they must be helped to learn. We must understand the meaning of education, to draw forth, not to cram in, to bring out that which we have already built within. From the heart of our beings blaze forth the fires of Atlantis, and our souls is the history of people as we have lived it. We must remember it. We must draw forth that knowledge. From the great things we would build can only be raised upon the things we know. If we are to create dream castles in the aethers, we must bring back again the power of dreaming. We cannot imagine that which we never know or think of that which we have never been. Therefore, education means to draw forth and profit by the things that we have been and the lessons that we have learned. This world must learn. If it learns as Atlantis did, it will die. But if it profits by the lessons of Atlantis, it will live. And each of us, worthy Atlanteans, and have studied the lessons that can never save our lands. It is no longer a problem of what we want to do. It is what we should do. It is what the duties of nature demand of us. In the name of gods, we must act. Let us remember the blood that sank Atlantis. Blood is heat, strife, and confusion. It is the life force of the universe. It is the Lamb of God slain for the sins of the world. It is the power of a people. We must take the golden chalice, and catching it, the lifeblood that now we wait to turn into the altar of our God. Then too we must have beauty, beauty of thought, glory of ideal. The loves of men must give place to the loves of God. The passions of our age must be transmuted into the compassions of the gods. For must give place to the Spirit again, or we shall be numbered with the dust. We must have education. If we do not, we shall find out our sorrow. The strength of people depends upon the knowledge that it applies, not upon hopes, wishes, or of the willy-nilly blowing of concepts, but up the solid rock of truth must our nation stand. Man is a slave of his fears, a servant of ignorance, and a groveling wretch at the feet of the unknown. We must rise, and taking his light, explore the recesses of each mystic cave. Each individual, if he does not know how to live, to eat, to think, must find out. The gods will never tell him unless he hears the voice of the gods in the wisdom of his fellow men. The way of knowledge, brotherhood, and service, the way of purity, truth alone can liberate us from the wheels of birth and death. We may talk of our shortcuts, back doors, second stories, patent medicine, spirituality, canned religion, just as gods, etc., to say nothing of the advanced spiritual teachings which transcend common sense. But unless we live the life to which we aspire, we shall be numbered with Atlantis. It is more important to know these things by far than rounds and periods, for upon them resist life itself. We are governed by the laws of cause and effect, and to this day we are building the causes which sank the Atlantis world, and we can expect nothing better from ourselves. We must realize that the earth beneath our feet is indeed the son of necessity, born that many live. It will mold itself into the needs of man, but his needs are seldom his wants. Humanity needs a good house cleaning, but they do not want it, and it must either come about through our loving service and labors with our fellow man, or through the thunderbolts of Jehovah. Let the spiritual fires of our universities rise from the plains of matter. Let the grandeur of ancient Greece be ours. Let us so live that we shall be a credit to creation and to the plan that brought us into being. As Luther Burbank converted the cactus with its prickly thorns into a nutritious food product by removing the sting, so let us transmute the powers of the people that they may rebuild and recreate. It is more important far to help someone who is not able to help himself than to have been cloistered for hours with the sages. We warn all occultists and true students that their place is in the world working and not in the temple praying, that their duty is to make the world their temple, to don the white armor of purity and ideals, and armed with the greatest of all weapons, which leaves no sting, the sword of truth, knowledge, and light, to go out and labor for the right. We cannot escape the sorrows of the world, but we can go out and change its tears to laughter and be a happier world that we ourselves have made. So as we stand on the cliffs of lost Atlantis and see the restless sea breaking upon the shore and hear the dark waves which are like the surgings of a lost people, let us realize that they are our own broken lives and that our own voices speak to us from the depths of the waters salty with the bitterness of tears millions who allowed black magic to replace the true mysteries. Even as we do today, black magic means the preservation of things. When we use energy to destroy, when we tear down the dream escalates for those we love, when we fill our lives with soreness, we are the black magicians. When we take the powers of God and use them to deceive our fellow men, when we use the powers of God gave us to free our souls to cast down, then we are the black magicians who have not learned our lessons from the seeking of Atlantis. Let us open wide the gates. Let the gates of brass swing open and man come forth. Let the tombstones be rolled away and the divine in man be realized from the shackles that now bind him. Let the divine in us be liberated and Christ call into the lower man, Lazarus come forth. Let our ideals be glooming lights upon the hilltops. We must tear up the thistles and briars before it is too late and plant flowers in their place and dedicate our lives to helping, serving, lifting, purifying, and glorifying mentally, physically, and spiritually all with whom we come in contact. We shall then be listed with the white-robed brothers who, carrying the sacred relics, pass with them into the promised land. A new race is to be born. Who will be its parents? There are few of earth who are ready to give to the new land a proper bright right. Let us remember once more the three things which bring them the loss of all, the price of blood, the loss of beauty, and the preservation of education, which sank an empire greater far than our own, and that the same power will sink this continent unless in each individual peace and brotherhood takes the place of blood and hate, beauty of spirit replaces sordidness of life, and that great eternal light, knowledge, supplants human ignorance.